like things are starting to slowly kind of get back to normal, aren't they?
Yes.
Define normal.
Well, yeah.
Hey, welcome to
Good point.
Smoker Broker. I'm Robert. I am the guy they call the Smoker Broker. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everything's going good as we continue to adjust as to how we're moving forward. And we are definitely moving forward. There is no doubt about that. No matter what side of the fence you are on, we are heading in the direction that wherever we're heading, we're going right now. It's a crazy time, and it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's different. I think everybody always fears the unknown, but in the end, I think we do return to the way we are one way or the other. I don't think it's normal, but I mean, we return. I read two things I want to talk about. We've been talking about COVID at the beginning of every episode for the last 2 months, as we should. We keep it short because we want the show to focus on real estate. But I'm going to talk about two things today before we get into our topic, which is a good one. We're talking about contingencies today, and it's one of the more annoying, difficult parts of real estate. So it's going to be a really good show from a content standpoint. But I want to talk about two things that hit me hard this week about COVID. The first one was this Ozark party, where you had all of these people out at the Ozarks. I don't know, hundreds. There's a lot of people, a lot of people at this one pool bar. And it, of course, it went through the social media rounds, and so here's the thing, because I think we're entering a culture war. I think we're entering a culture war in this country where we have a division on what's right and wrong. This isn't new to us. We've had these things before, but this is a unique one because this is one that we haven't seen before, and the sides are very well drawn. And here's my take on it. Okay. I personally believe that many people together that close right now is probably not a good idea. I want to be, for the record, from the beginning, I have felt there should have been strict social distancing. I don't think we should have closed anything down. I don't, especially now that I'm looking back at things. I don't think we should have closed things down. I think we should have insisted on very strict social distancing, which is what we're supposed to be doing now. Okay. But here's the thing, that can't happen because not everybody's on board with that. And it's not going to happen. It's not happening right now. And the Ozarks is a great example. Those of you who didn't see it, there's a ton of people at this Ozark pool bar this past Memorial Day weekend. And, it obviously it's not the most intelligent thing, but here's the deal with that. It's America. You can say it's a respect thing, that they should be more respectful of others, but that goes right back the other way too. You have to be respectful of those people. If that's what they want to do, that's up to them. I thought it was a foolish idea, but that's up to them. If they want to move forward and be like that, that's up to them. If you don't like it and you're concerned that it affects you, you don't have to be in those situations. You just avoid them. But I'm going to tell you right now, no matter what you do, as long as those things are going on, as long as you're going to the grocery store and going out to eat, there's no way to stay away from the virus if it's in your vicinity. There's not. So we can do all these weird things. We can do all this structure things, separate people, go into classrooms and separate people, have people concerned about, I think one of the other pet peeves, and this kind of blends into my second point that I have right now with this COVID thing, is now you're getting to where businesses are concerned with the legal repercussions if someone catches COVID in their business. Let me tell you right now, and I'm pretty blunt, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. If there's any court in this world that names somebody who on their own goes into an organization, a business, a restaurant, and they somehow get sick and they blame it on that business, y'all, that we're just going the wrong way. I've already talked to too many people that, have attorneys that are telling me you need to be careful with this. Y'all, I love attorneys and I've got tons of friends that are attorneys, but anybody out there right now who's advocating that the businesses have to be protected because people are going to sue. If there's any court in this land, holds somebody responsible for somebody getting COVID, this whole thing just doesn't work. And that is the problem from this past week. Those two things have absorbed my thought process as we're moving forward, looking at things, because you can sit there and say it's a respect issue about the mask. Okay. And I get that. I do. But those other people have a respect issue too, that they don't want to have the mask on. And nobody's right or wrong here. They're not. You can argue all day on it. There are right. This is as close to 50-50 as I've ever seen in my entire life as to what's right or wrong here. And it's the most interesting time in my life, from the things that we've gone through. But it's not going to be fixed. And if that's the way it's going to be, then we have to respect how we move forward with everybody. It's everybody, if that's what they choose to do, that's fine. You have the right to avoid those people. Yes, it's respectful to probably have a mask on when you're dealing with people. But if they don't want to put the mask on, then they don't want to put the mask on. And you know what? If they don't want to put the mask on, then walk away. Go somewhere else. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't mock someone for having a mask. If you want to have a mask on, hey, put your mask on. I am not making fun of somebody who has a mask on. I'll be honest, I've worn it in certain locations. If there's too many people, I put it on. But there are other places that I haven't put it on. I mean, just go easy on the, what your opinion of somebody. In the end, it's their right to do it. Whether you like it or not, it's a whole nother conversation. And quite honestly, it's not a conversation that some people asked for. Yeah, right. You sit there and all these people bashing one way or the other. It's not going to fix a damn thing. Nothing is going to be fixed by bashing anybody on whatever side you're on. You just have to accept what it is, and you can avoid it or be a part of it. But this stuff about fixing the businesses to where they're structured to try to avoid these types of things, that's not going to stop anything. There's no medical expert in the world that's going to sit there and say that this is going to stop. Yeah, it might ease the amount of how fast it spreads, but it cannot be stopped. And crippling a business to where it's running at 50% capacity to make these changes, I don't know how that's going to pan out in 6 months. You have restaurants and all these people out there right now going 50%. How long are they going to make it? How long are they going to make it at 50%? Those guys were already on a thin line margin as it was. At some point, I mean, we're just going to have to put it up in the air and say, look, we're going with it. And those that are vulnerable, we have to be more careful. And those that are not, we move on. I read an article this morning talking about, that there will never be a return to normalcy. And the article was like, yeah, right. There will be a return to normalcy. There will. There will be a vaccine for this virus. And as soon as the vaccine comes out, a lot of people believe they will return to normal. Will people be a little more careful when they're out and about and what they do? Yeah. But that article, it was right. It hit home to me this morning. I'm like, it's right. We will return to some type of normalcy. We always do. 911, ridiculous, all the stuff we have to go through an airport. And it's been right. We should have those things in place to be more protective. But it was a change that we altered in our life. Do we consider it a new norm to the airport after 911? I don't know. I don't think it's a new norm as much as it's just freaking annoying, But now talking about everything we have in life, grocery stores, restaurants, school, I don't know. It's going to be a tough call. All right, enough of that. This show is not a talk show for opinion-based things and all those types, right, Dallas? But
right, exactly.
But I will admit, and this is the reason why I put it on this particular episode and the last few episodes, it does affect our real estate business. It does. And don't sit there and argue with me on, well, oh, that's great that you're selfish about your business versus health. I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all. I'm saying it is having an effect on not only our business, but other businesses as well. And that is a fact. It is affecting it. And then we get into the argument on what's right or what's wrong. And that's the reason why I chose to talk about it today, because it is evident that we are going through some structure changes that I don't know if they're going to do the right thing or not. But one thing or another, it's going to affect us in each of the businesses that we are entering. And because of that, that's why I thought it was relevant to discuss this. All right, let's talk about contingencies today. Talk about nasty subjects. This one's nasty too. Probably one of the more annoying conversations we get into in real estate. We talk a lot about our show being focused on real estate events to help the agents that are coming on. This show is not only good for the agents that are coming into the business, but even some existing agents that don't necessarily understand some of the rules. And when we start talking about contingencies, especially the contingencies on the sale of your house before you buy another one, you'd be shocked at how many real estate agents don't understand this concept. So we're going to talk about that today. As always, I bring my crew on. I don't like doing this by myself. They like to throw in their jabs because they're pretty smart guys, a lot smarter than I am, and they are in the field day to day. So as always, I got my buddy over there, David Tanner, out of the Coppell area. He is with our SWR group out of Keller Williams, a very good, competent agent. He'll serve just about anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but like he is focused in on that northern hub out there. David, how are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you guys?
Good.
Let's go.
I'm interested on your opinion. You have a wife that's in the health industry and, is on the front lines there, which we're so thankful for her. But what are your comments on what I just talked about? What do you think? Because I think it hits harder for you that you see it. What are your thoughts with it?
You hit on all some really good points there. And because my wife is in the healthcare, I try to be a little bit more cautious when I go out. I mean, I went to Office Depot yesterday, and my daughter and we wore a mask. I mean, I would say 60% of the people in there probably had a mask on. All the employees had a mask on. I try to keep up with it, and I don't know. There's just, one day they tell you the masks are beneficial, then the next day they tell you they don't help. So
we didn't talk about that. The inconsistencies in that was the thing that came out this week too. They found that it doesn't stay on the surface as long as they thought.
Right.
Straight.
Well, and you hit on something too. I mean, it's become so politicized. I mean, and I won't go into the details, but like on my wife's side of the family, they're more liberal, and they're more about staying at home and adhering to everything to the T. Whereas my side of the family is more conservative, and they're ready to get going. I mean, my sister. Yeah, go ahead.
You brought up something else that bothered me too this past week. This stuff about the mask.
One of about 20 things, Robert.
Yeah, well, I know, right? Dallas is a good friend of mine. Anybody else who watches the show that's good friends of mine, they're like, well, Robert always has something he's bitching about. That stuff about the mask being politicized, I'm like, that's ridiculous. I don't think anybody gives a damn on whether they have a mask or not, whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Exactly.
I heard a lot this week. I'm like, it's a personal choice for some of those people whether they put mask on. There are plenty of Democratic liberal people that do not have the mask on.
That's right. That you're absolutely. Now I will say this: we went to a local sandwich shop, and I won't mention them by name.
Yeah.
But we go there on a regular basis. Well, we pulled up the other day, and I could clearly see from the car that nobody working there had on a mask.
Yeah.
Nobody had on gloves, and so one of the employees, I literally watched him rub his face.
Yeah.
And then go back to making sandwiches. And I told my wife, we're out of here.
Yeah.
That's
the problem. I mean,
it's so inconsistent. And we went down the street to another restaurant, and lo and behold, they all had masks on and gloves, and they were taking precautions. So there's so many inconsistencies out there. And
the guy.
Anyway, to answer your question,
he's over there.
Yeah.
I look outside. He's out there vaping and touching his face, taking his shirt off, and he's sweating. I actually see him do this, and then he comes in and touches the doorknob, And you know what? I wasn't like, oh no, but I was like, God bless, man. You could at least be a little more, common sense. Common sense.
Well, here's something funny, real quick. I went to a convenience store the other day to get gas, and I kid you not, a guy comes walking out of the store with a mask on and a 12-pack of beer and cigarettes.
Sounds like my kind of guy.
I'm like, okay, what are you really?
You shouldn't have had the mask.
Right? Yeah. Why are you wearing a mask when you're smoking the cigarettes and drinking beer? I mean, I just thought it was kind of funny.
Tough world. All right, good to have you, Dave. My buddy Mike
thank you.
down there. He's a good realtor too. He's up there in the Denton area, but he'll drive a good ways too. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Oh, Mike never changes. I've known Mike for over 20 years now. He looks the same as he does. He doesn't gain weight. He doesn't age. It's ridiculous. It's almost annoying. It's like frustrating to see him.
Yeah, what's your secret?
I do it just to annoy you, actually, Robert.
Well, like you said, I get annoyed very easily. So that's anybody who knows me, it's funny.
Because he wears a mask every day.
Yeah, right. I should have a mask on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. I try to walk the line pretty. I don't try to stir pots one way or the other. I'm sure I'll catch some flack for this episode because I kind of leaned a little ways on the opinions this morning, but I feel strongly about it, and I do pick the battles I think worth fighting for. And I tell anybody who has a problem that watches today, that has a problem with my comments about the mask and what's right and what's wrong, you just let me know, and you can come on the show, and you and I will talk about it from a common sense level. Because there's not anybody in this country or this world that I won't sit across from right now and discuss the goods and the bads of what's happening. And that's how comfortable I feel about that. So if you did have issues with
there's arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
Arguments can be made.
Yeah, I'm
It's
not
just
making fun of anybody.
weird.
I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm not poking at anybody. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong.
Yeah.
I'm saying what the effect is causing to a lot of people out there. But if you want to talk about it, come on. This is very, very easy to get on the KVGI media and get on these shows, and we can discuss it if you want to. So I want to leave with that because I think it's unfair when someone, you have media sessions out there like CNN, they'll just say their point and that's it, and they move on. I'm not like that. You want to come talk? I'll talk with you about this. I have no problem with that at all. Anyways, Mike, good to have you there. Mike's been a part of a lot of these contingencies. He's seen these things through, so he's a good one to have on the show as well, because me and him have had many conversations over the years about the contingencies. Yes, Holly, you're right. True Robert Meche fashion. Tell it like it is. There, you say what you want about me, but you're right. And what you see is what you get. And that's exactly, I don't shy away from what I think is what I want to tell someone, or whether it's right or wrong. I will tell it, and I have no problem with talking with someone on the other end about it. I'm always extremely respectful to anybody's opinion if they want to discuss it. So you're right about that, Holly. Okay, we're going to talk about the worst document in the history of Texas real estate, and probably the rest of this country too, for those of you who listen outside the state of Texas. This addendum for the sale of other property by buyer. This is what we know as a contingency, to where a buyer has to sell their house before they can buy yours. Obviously, most people who want to move into another house have to sell theirs before they can afford the new house, because their money is tied up in that particular house. So there's a lot of things that have to happen for us to be able to make this transaction. Now, from the general public's view, they think that this is just, oh, no problem. Let's go start looking at houses, and, we'll just find one and then we'll sell ours. It doesn't work like that. I think one of the more frustrating things we get. Go ahead, Mike.
We wish.
I know. Yeah. In a perfect world, I do wish it was that easy. I do wish we could just go buy it. But those people are relying on you, and your business isn't done yet. It's very frustrating when someone comes into the market and they're like, well, I want to start looking at houses right now, but we haven't sold ours yet. I'm like, well, what do you want to do with that? All that can happen there is you're going to fall in love with houses that you can't have. So, I don't know how far we can go with this. Now, I want to be clear. I do believe that when you want to buy a new house and you have to sell yours and you haven't done that yet, I do think we have to have a couple of visits out in the field so you can see what's out there and what's available. But it's when you start getting serious about it that becomes a problem, because once you're ready to purchase a house, the God honest truth is, if you haven't got sold yours yet, or it's not under contract, there's going to be some obstacles in the way of you being able to achieve that. I'm going to tell you this right now, especially in Texas, 90% of the agents, if they hear that you have a contingency and you're not under contract, you better believe they're going to say, we're not doing that. And I will tell you, the 60%, even if you have a contract, they're very weary about it. They're very weary about accepting that offer. So takeaways. We're trying to do a better job of telling people how to take away things from the show. That's one takeaway. Those of you who are agents and you're having trouble with a client that doesn't understand this, when you're wanting to buy another house and you haven't sold your house yet, we are advising you. You can go out and look a couple times to see what's out there for you, but if you're already turning the wheels, making it like it's going to happen because you just automatically assume your house is going to sell, that's not a good idea. And we are of the opinion, at a minimum, that house should probably be under contract before you actually start getting serious about putting another one on. Now, there are some brokers that disagree with that. They're just like, get them out there and get them under contract. I'm like, how many contracts are we going to have to write before we are tired of being told get lost? Because that's what happens most of the time. Those of you who think this is a slam dunk, when you find another house and you haven't sold, you got it all wrong. You probably are in a 10% window of people that will even consider that offer. Michael, thoughts?
Well, especially right now.
Especially right now.
Back in 2007, 8, 9, even 10, they were taking those offers left and right. They had to.
Right. It does matter the timing of the market when we do this type of thing.
Well, and we submitted an offer last week on one with my out-of-state client, and the seller clearly said we were not taking any contingencies. Well, as it turns out, my client doesn't. They do have a house to sell, but they're willing to buy their new house without a contingency.
Right.
So,
which is a very low percentage of people that can
qualify for that. And yeah, you're right. And we've had that conversation. I've spoken to his loan officer, and he's in a position where he can afford to do that, and he does not, need a contingency. But that first one that we put an offer on, they clearly said no, we're not accepting it because we're still in a seller's market in a lot of places.
Well, pretty much all across the country.
Yeah, and they don't have to
market, and then we back into a seller's market. And COVID kind of stapled that.
Yeah,
to put us back in. We talked about this about a year ago, how we were shifting back into a buyer's market. Well, that's reversed itself. We are back into a seller's market. All right, quick comment as we continue to move on. Another takeaway, and it's an important one. You, as a listing agent, you're there to protect that seller. I don't know how much protection you're giving that seller by advising them to take an offer from someone who hasn't sold their house, got their house under contract yet. You're basically telling them, well, we're going to put them in the same boat that we're in right now. And I don't think that's very good protection. Understand this. This document, it specifically says that these people have to X date to sell their house, which means that they can go right to the day before that date, or actually the day of that date. And if they haven't sold their house yet, and if it's been 2 months, they can back out and get everything. Their earnest money, all the other stuff. And if you had other people that were interested in the house, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, how that possibly could have worked out, but that could have been scaring those people away all this time. I don't know how much protection that really is. I can tell you.
Especially 2 months.
Go ahead, Mike.
Especially 2 months.
Well, especially 2 months, and especially the time of the year.
Yeah.
One of the worst times, in my opinion, to take a contingency offer is right now until the end of summer. This is the hottest selling part of the year.
Right.
You put your house on hiatus. That you're rolling dice. You are rolling dice. There are other people out there that probably buy this, especially in the seller's market. For you to sit there and to consider that contingency. And I make this conversation really easy because any client that we have, we tell them, if we have one that comes in, I'm like, hey, here are the consequences to this. I am not a fan of it. Now, if you want to do it, that's up to you. But understand this, that person can hold this house hostage for a long time and walk and discourage the other people from coming in. And that's not something I advise quite a bit. All right.
Well, and it is a tough situation. I did my first ever contingency this past year, and And I was the listing agent, and we got an offer, from a buyer, and they had to sell their house before they could purchase my client's house. Well, fortunately for them, I mean, we're in a good market here, obviously, and the house that they had for sale, I mean, it was ready to go. It was pristine condition, and as everything worked out, they had literally had a contract on their house within probably 72 hours because they had a lot of interest in it. So it worked out. But my client we had lots of conversation about it, and believe me, he was very nervous about it because he knew the consequences of,
I want to say a couple of comments. Kay is out there and says, I have a contract now who doesn't understand we have to list their house before we can look. I've explained this several times. That's exactly why we're doing the show, because that is what we see. Hey, Missy, haven't seen you in a long time. Hope you're doing well. I'd love to hear Missy's comments on what we talked about in the beginning about COVID. Missy's has great opinions. I'm interested if she caught the first part of that. Kay, back to your point though about that's what we're trying to give as a takeaway. A lot of people think they can just go off, buy the house, or they start looking. See, and the worst ones are the ones that are ready to go look for months. And I will admit, over the years, I had to change that policy. I did get to where I told someone, look, I'm going to take you out a couple of times so you can see what's out there because I think you need that. But after that, there's nothing we can do until we get that house under contract. So I go, we're going to need to wait until that happens. And I'll admit, I've lost clients over the years because of that, but I've never lost a wink of sleep over it. Believe me, those people that want to keep looking, they're wasting everybody's time because nothing can be done. They cannot purchase the house. And even if they think there's a small chance that that person's going to take it, all this time is being utilized for what's probably a very small percentage. I mean, you're literally talking about probably less than 10% of the people that are going to be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. So very frustrating. All right, I want to turn this conversation as we get into the second half of the show, talking about how this document sucks. Okay. And, I do wish Trek sometimes watched the show or caught pieces of it because I've got no problem in the ultimate respect to that organization. This document sucks. This is a terrible document. It always has been, and it always will until somebody changes it. And if you want to know why, there are a lot of agents, not even the general public. God, they're so far away from understanding it. The agents themselves, 5-10-year agents that still think that this document means when their seller agrees to it, that they can continue to solicit other offers, which is true, they can, but they're also of the belief that if somebody brings a new offer in, that they can just kick this person, the original buyer, out. And to their credit, the boards and the MLS systems haven't been very helpful because they categorize this as what they call a kick out, which it makes somebody believe, well, I can just kick this person out. That's not necessarily how this works. Okay? What happens when you have this contingency? So you have an original buyer that has to sell their house. They're under contract with you. It's binding. It's a binding contract, okay? You can't just throw this out. That's the first takeaway from this. You cannot throw the contingency out. It's going to be at the choice of, believe it or not, the original buyer, not you. A lot of sellers think it's their choice. It's not your choice. It's the original buyer's choice on whether they get thrown out. So original buyer under contract, they have to sell theirs yet. They haven't done it. New buyer comes in. Sorry, Kathy, the document, the addendum for sale of other property by buyer, the contingency when you're selling your home, when you have to sell your home to buy another one. So new buyer comes in. They put an offer on the house. Of course, the offer is better. They know the offer has to be better because they're trying to basically take that house away from somebody else who already has it under contract. And of course, this new buyer doesn't have a contingency. So in a perfect world to the seller's like, well, why the hell do I need this person? Get lost, because this one's a guarantee. And you can't have your cake and eat it too in this particular situation, which is why one of the reasons why we don't necessarily support this particular type of situation, because you're kind of putting yourself in harm's way and at the mercy of somebody else. So the new buyer comes in, they put a more attractive offer with no contingency. Of course, the seller wants to go with this one, but they have one big problem. They're already bounded in this contract. Okay, this contract says that this person, the original buyer, has until X date, which is probably a month or two from now, to close on this house. Okay? So what the seller can now do, they can't kick this person out, but what they can do to the original buyer is they can tell them, hey, I've got this person coming in and their offer is much better than yours. I can't sit there and wait for you to sell your house without some financial remedies. So here's what's going to happen. I'm asking you to either terminate this contract, we'll give you your earnest money back, and you can go on your separate ways, and we can go ahead with this new purchase. It's your choice, though, that you don't have to do that. You can stay inside this contract, even though your house is not under contract, but you're now putting me in harm's way that I have someone who's ready to buy the house right now, but you're telling me you're not going to let them do that because you're already under contract. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you to waive your contingency. I'm going to say this contract will continue to move forward, but if you don't close on this house, not only do you lose the earnest money you originally put down, this document has where there's going to be additional earnest money put down if that happens. And this amount's typically going to be higher because it's warning that buyer, you better close one way or the other, because if you don't, it's going to cost you. And that's the mistake that a lot of people don't understand. It's the buyer's choice. They can walk away if they choose and get their money back. But if they don't want to lose the house, but can't guarantee their house is going to be sold, they're going to have to put money up and put themselves in financial in a hard place if they want to do this. It's rare, but you can also add a legal issue in there that seller could possibly go after them, not only for earnest money, but for other financial hardships due to them not closing on the house. It's not as simple as the contingency is solely based on their house selling. If they've told them to waive that contingency, they basically said their intent is to close, but they're gambling. They're gambling that they are going to close on their house, and they don't know that. And if they don't know that, the seller could incur financial hardship, and they might come after them for that. Yes, that's rare. Most of the time, it's, hey, we're going to take the additional earnest money in the original. We're irritated by this, but we've been paid and compensated for the loss of time. But there are some people that can get a little touchier with it and go a little bit further. Now, I will admit, it does get on my nerves when we've warned the seller how terrible this process is, and they start getting like that. I'm like, you were told from the beginning, this sucks. Which, by the way, to Holly's point earlier, that's exactly what I tell my clients. I'm like, this sucks. This is a terrible process. You are not going to enjoy any piece of this. You are obviously a gambler if you're doing this, because you're gambling. You do not know this is going to happen. So we don't sugarcoat it, but it's very annoying when it starts getting wishy-washy and gray and they start chapping away. I'm like, I told you not to do this. How my agents will tell you, that's an annoying conversation I have between me and them, where I told them not to do this, and now they're in trouble. And now they're having to go through this. I'm like, it's hard for me to have sympathy for you right now. I told you, I begged you to tell that person not to do this. I'd rather get one of my teeth pulled without any type of Novocaine than have to go through with dealing with this situation when it all falls apart. And that's where we're going to spend the rest of this time. You think it's bad so far? Wait till we start talking about what really can happen on this. So let's talk about the domino theory. Okay, let's talk about the dominoes where here's your house. This buyer's coming in and they're going to buy your house, but they got to sell their house to buy your house. The buyer that's buying their house has to sell their house to buy their house. And then the same thing 4 or 5 times over. This does actually happen. Okay. And this is what we call the domino effect. Because I'm telling you, if the first domino falls, the rest of them fall too. And it ain't fun. You know, I joke a lot on my shows about how 97% of my days are awesome. Best days, best job I ever had. But those 3%, I always joke, those of you that drink will drink more. Those of you that smoke will smoke more. They are just awful. And this is one of the categories that falls into those 3. In fact, if I was being really specific, it falls into the 1% because these are awful. These are terrible, terrible, terrible when you're the listing agent on the first domino and your deal is about to crash because of this guy, or I'm sorry, you're the first one over here and you're on the end of it. And you're representing the first person on the domino. There is nothing fun because here's the problem. Not only do you have to tell the shit news to that buyer, then it's everybody else in that stupid chain. And let me tell you, when you talk to those people, each of them are going to chew your ass out left and right. So you are going to have to take this beating from not only probably 4 or 5 other agents, but you might even get the clients to jump in there too. When it's totally not our fault, but they're going to jump on us because everybody's been affected by this. This is a terrible process to be a part of. That domino effect. And so here's another thing. You want to talk about takeaways from the show. This is really good for the new agents out there that are yet to enjoy this unpleasantry. When you're going to take that contingency, you better damn well have done some research on the person who's buying the house. You better damn well have asked, hey, where's their house? Is it under contract? That's the first question, okay? The second question becomes, is their buyer contingent? And if their buyer is contingent, is their buyer contingent? And y'all, if common sense is not dictating this conversation right now, I'm telling you, if you're the listing agent and that person says, well, yeah, their buyer's contingent too, and you continue on, you're asking for trouble. You are asking for trouble. You are basically it's bad enough to have one clientele that you're dealing with, more or less 4, 5, or 6 others that you don't even know controlling this situation. So you're just asking for trouble. Mm-hmm. I think it becomes difficult when you've gone through the work to verify the other situations and you're comfortable, but then you find out that the what do you call it? The person that did the homework on they weren't forthcoming. They weren't truthful. And that becomes an issue too. All right. As we continue to this deep conversation, I want to make sure that I talk about our sponsor. We're always very happy to have Martin Cooley with BPG Inspections as our sponsor. You can reach Martin at 817-401-3240. Again, that's 817-401-3240. Martin is an outstanding home inspector. He is one of our primary vendors with the SWR group. And again, we offer choices to many vendors when we're talking to our clients because we don't want to say use one particular person. And we have relationships with a lot of great home inspectors out there, but Martin really does stand head and shoulders above the rest. He is such a strong inspector. He's done it for years, 20 plus. I don't have his bio in front of me, which I should. That's why I started stuttering there for a second, because I'm like, I don't have his bio in front of me, but thankfully Mark has his information there for me, and I already know a lot about it. But he's done it for a long time, and one of my favorite things about him is he's a very good bedside manner, very good about telling the clients what the problems with the house without scaring them, and that's half the battle in this process. He's a veteran of this country. He served this country. He's an experienced home inspector. I've never had an issue to this date with that individual. And believe me, we've done a lot of houses with them. So anybody out there, we have a lot of the Keller Williams world, a lot of the other brokerages out there that watch the show. Very good resource if you're looking for a home inspector. Thank you very much for always sponsoring the show. You're extremely important to not only us, but a lot of the people out in the North Texas area. All right. Back into the contingencies, where you get these people, where you try to do the best you can. You're starting to see the pattern. This is not the greatest thing for us to do. Holly mentions my buyer that had a contingency contract on McKinney home to sell their home. Oh God, I remember this one. In Connecticut, and buyer in Connecticut quit their job the day of closing. So the seller in McKinney couldn't close on their home in California. A lot of tears, conversations with Robert, one of my first deals. That is not a fun thing to be a part of when one of your first deals is one of these. And it's especially not fun after
Get you prepared, though.
Don't do this. You still do
Right.
it anyways. But you know what? Holly's got guts, and she did it anyways. She went against the protocol, but she did it with an intelligent conversations about what to do. She sought the information she needed. She closed, and she was successful in that. We closed that house. I was very proud of her on that particular deal. You know, we talk about how ugly these things can be, but they can also be very rewarding if they eventually go through. And boy, Holly, that was a bad one. I always joke about everybody that I'm surprised all my hair hasn't grayed up on the top. My beard shows it, but my hair up here, I mean, I'm knocking on 50's door, and I'm surprised it doesn't look a lot worse, because my individual agents, they see this isolated. Now, when you have 125 to 150 agents, I see this weekly. So this conversation happens to me on a weekly basis, and it's just not pleasant. There's always a problem. I can tell you this, 20 years doing this, I still cannot recall a time where we did a contingency. I was like, oh man, that was easy. It never is. You know, even if you get through the hard parts, even if you've got through all this horribleness that we're talking about, you still have to hope that you can financially go through. Everybody financially can go through. We haven't even talked about, what about people who legitimately are good, but then something terrible happens, like they lose their job or there's a death, which does happen. And you're talking about making a process worse. Throw that on top of this. I mean, how sick can you get? You know? Yeah, Cammie. Hey, Holly, Cammie can join the crowd in your first deals being contingent. She's one of those too, and she's another one that did a really good job on having to navigate this process. But she's going to tell you right now, her comment's great in the chat. You know, it's like, I feel lucky right now. You know what? She should. And I love that comment, because there is a little bit of luck on the contingency on whether it goes through. You have to have some luck involved in this process. So, I mean, that's actually a really competent comment. There has to be some luck in it, because it's not just a slam dunk. Mike, you've had some bad ones.
Well, it's like you.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, well, it's like you said earlier. It's really, it all starts with that listing agent. Okay, when that contract comes in, or that offer comes in with a contingency, like you said, that domino effect can be devastating. So you have to start right away and talk to that buyer's agent and find out where in the process is that buyer. I mean, with their home, is it listed? Is it under contract? Where is it located? I mean, there's a lot. I was fortunate. The one I had, it was ready to go. They had there was nothing to wait on. They got it under contract pretty quick. But even then, it was a gamble. But there were no other contingencies down the line.
Yeah.
But something still could have happened.
Absolutely.
So if you start off, if you do your due diligence in the beginning as a listing agent, you can avoid some of that to start with.
I constantly say and preach that the listing agent manages the process. They manage this transaction. It is their responsibility to vet those people that are coming in on what do they have on the backside, and if the show was longer, we would talk about third-party financing contingent, because that kind of falls into place too. That part of our vetting process is to ask for an approval letter and sometimes even to talk to the lender to see where this person is at. So there are multiple contingencies that can affect us, but it's our job to vet that person when they're coming through to protect our seller. Our responsibility, number one, is to protect the seller with our advice and our opinions. That is what we are paid to do. And you're not doing a very good job of doing that if you're letting offers like this come through and encourage it. Like, I've seen some people that they're so desperate to have an offer accepted, they'll encourage the seller to take that. That is a bad way of doing business. You don't ever tell someone high five on this contingency. You flat out, even if you're desperate, you tell them, hey, look, this is a lousy situation, but you follow it with, we've been in a lousy situation. This might be the alternative we have to go with. That's how you explain when you're desperate, a contingency coming in. You're not like, oh, you're going to need to take this. You don't ever say, you got to take this on that contingency. If you're really representing that seller, they have to know what can happen if these other people get in our way. So, Mike, you've gone through this.
Well, and so I think so. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, we've had this conversation a few times, a few nights where, you've had these people go through these contingencies, and in fact, I want to say multiple times you've had a few back out there, right?
Yeah, several times. I mean, you look at it. I mean, sometimes those buyers are going to make a contingency look really good with asking price 5,000 over, 7,000 over, and the seller sees that and thinks that's what's awesome, and you almost have to calm them down to say, look, they are over asking. That's great,
right?
Here's why they're over asking.
Yeah, you don't want camouflaged. This is the same thing with it's the same thing we're talking about. When you have an offer that's already under contract, when someone comes in after the fact, obviously they're trying to steal that away because they know. And it's funny how the seller's always shocked by, well, this offer's so much better. I'm like, well, no shit, it's better. They know it has to be better. They're not going to get it. My favorite conversation is when a buyer comes in on the back end and their offer's like 20,000 higher, and the seller bitches at me. They're like, why'd we take this one? I'm like, you really think that person's coming in 20,000 higher because we mispriced the house? They're doing it because they know that it's going to be a pain in the ass. There might even be legal ramifications for this to happen. Of course, they're going to come in higher. That was a dumb conversation. Why would you think they're not coming high? But I love it when they blame me. Yeah. I knew you took it less than that. Common sense.
You're in it with the buyer. You're in collusion with the buyer.
Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to happen.
Well, and I think sometimes too, a seller, especially if that house, depending on how long their house has been on the market, they may be afraid, hey, I may not get another offer. This may be the best that there is. But then that other one comes along that's 20,000 above, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, well, crap! I shouldn't have taken that." Well,
sour grape sucks in this business,
Yeah, it does, and we tried to tell you that because we don't. I'm not a magician. I tell people, look, I'm a realtor. I'm not a magician. I can't tell you. I can't. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you how many offers are going to come in. It is a risk, and and I'm going to give you all the information that I have, but it's ultimately up to you, to make that decision.
Yeah,
I'm a magician. Unlike David, I'm a magician.
Mike knows.
Make yourself disappear right now.
Mike knows some magic tricks, like the finger one where he does the. He's a clown. No, so you have all these unpleasantries. Not a fun conversation. Not a fun topic. As we're getting towards the end of the show, I do want to talk about one tactical issue if you are even considering doing this contingency, when it talks about the dates. So if you're the buyer agent and you're going to put this offer in place, typically we do 30 days out from the offer to when we're going to close. On this contingency, it's probably best for you to do a 60-day close. If you put 90 or 120 days, good luck. Nobody's going to let you hold their house hostage that long. You might have a chance on the 60 days. And, if you can't get under contract in that time, you either go back to the seller and try to renew and say, hey, look, can we change this and amend this? And if not, they're like, hey, we tried, it didn't work. The time frame typically probably should be 60 days max, or maybe even 30 days, as long as we get a contract within 30 days, and then we can extend knowing that we have a contract. But going in there, putting 3 months, that's just ridiculous. And that actually reminds me of another conversation that's a huge no in this industry. Don't you dare, as a buyer agent, put an offer on somebody's house knowing that your buyer's house has to sell and you don't tell them that there's contingent. By the way, you can be slapped on the hand by the Texas Real Estate Commission. They've been very clear from an ethics standpoint that you have to disclose that person has to sell their house to buy this one if the lender has required that. There's a lot of agents out there that try to hide it because they know a contingency will probably be refused. And then there's a lot of them that try because they're that confident that they actually think they can do this. Y'all, you talk about bad days when you start gambling that for a fact the house is going to close. There ain't nothing good that's going to come from that. I'm telling you right now, you are heading for the worst There is, a lot of people think I get mad just because I can be opinionated and I do get annoyed by a lot of things. But as far as getting like really, really mad, that doesn't happen as often as you would think with me. But I'm going to tell you, when someone pulls that stunt, where I find out that our close is going to be delayed or worse, even canceled, because all of a sudden they have to have funds from their home that they didn't tell me about, that's about as ugly as I get in a real estate transaction. And I am a nice guy, contrary to popular belief. I am a very nice guy. I don't typically, I let someone have it when they got it coming. And that person who hides that they have a contingency and they've held up not only is it legally an issue, ethically an issue, it's just a dirtbag POS thing to do. It's rude. It's horrible you have a whole family that's being affected and a whole nother family that might be affected because if you're not truthful about your decision, because you knew that if you put that in there, we probably wouldn't take the offer. That's even worse when there's multiple offers that we could have taken and we chose to go with yours because it was better, but you hid the contingency. There's all types of wrong in that conversation. Don't ever be a part of one of those. When your client does that, you stand up to them and you say, hey, look, they need to know you financially are not capable of buying this house unless you sell this one. Well, we know it's going to sell. No, you don't. We don't know for a fact that it's going to sell. Don't ever do that. It's one of the worst things in real estate. One of the lowest things you can do is hide a contingency. So many families are affected by it. So many financial implications because you weren't being honest, which is always the first step that we look at in any agent is their honesty and their integrity and their ethics on how they conduct themselves, because that right there is about as low as it can get.
Yep.
I want to thank everybody for watching the show. This is a good show. This is a good educational show out there for everyone, buyers, sellers, opinions on the COVID side of it, where we're heading with it. Lots of good contact today. So thank you as always for watching. I want to thank David Tanner and Mike Dallas for taking their time. These are guys that have other things going on. Usually on a bi-weekly basis or every other 3 weeks they're on. They take the time to do the show. The show's not easy. You get put on the spot. You get asked questions. And they're comfortable enough with their expertise. Oh, God, that's loud. They're comfortable with their expertise to come on the show and be asked questions. And that's why anybody who has clients or their clients or their agents of them, these are guys that are good agents. These are guys that have been doing it for a long time, and they're very confident. They've been on the show for 2 years now. You're very fortunate to have them representing you, as anybody who comes on the show. Thank everybody out there. I hope you guys have a great week. We'll talk to y'all really soon. See y'all next week for sure.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.